Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. It's 9 a.m. sharp, and we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to welcome you to the new educators training this morning. My name is Ronnie Nolan. I serve as the director of the Kentucky Educational Collaborative for State Agency Children. That is the state agency that has oversight responsibility for educational programs that serve children and youth who are in the care or custody of the Commonwealth. And we're going to spend a little bit of time this morning talking about what KECSAC is, give you a little bit of an overview of that, a little bit of welcome to the family, share who we are and what we do in our areas of responsibility, and a little bit of our history and kind of how we got to where we are. Following that, which will take about 30 minutes or so, we have done our best to work in some breaks throughout the morning because we know that sitting in front of your computer is probably not the most effective way to learn at this point. And I think you guys probably already are experiencing that with your students in programs across the Commonwealth as well. So about 9:30, 9:35, we'll have a little bit of a break for about 10 minutes or so and come back at 9:45. And then we'll have Peggy Shearer and Angela Austin, who are our program improvement specialists. And those are the folks who do site visits to your programs. And they'll be talking about what that will look like and kind of give you a little bit of a heads up of what to expect over this coming first year in a KECSAC program. That will go for about an hour, and then we'll have another little break. And then we'll come back at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central Time, and meet with Stella Pollard from Franklin County Public Schools, who is charged with their technical and distance education program, and she's going to give us a lesson on how to do that effectively and share some resources with us so that we continue to improve the services that we're offering our students virtually, and in case those of you who are in person, in case you have to move to virtual sometime in the future, we'll have the skills and resources necessary to do that. But again, we're really excited that you are here. This is, I think, one of the best kept secrets in education in Kentucky, and you will quickly learn that if you haven't yet. We have great students, we have great teachers, we have great administrators, we have a lot of really good people who work together to support our students across the state. And so I think you'll find that this is probably going to be your most rewarding working experience in your career. I know many of you have long careers already and have worked in education a long time. And while you may be new to a KECSAC program, we know that you're seasoned educators already. But even our seasoned educators, I think now are in a new era of education in Kentucky and in the country. And you all know that and are experiencing that firsthand. As a parent of a second grader, I am getting to experience it both from the administrative side of the house, but also the parent side of the house. And I know many of you are doing that as well, as we learn to navigate what education looks like in the era of COVID-19. And so we know that this looks different. And so, as I said, even experienced educators who have years in the classroom are learning new tricks of the trade alongside all of us during this time. So we hope that we'll share some good information with you, and we hope that you'll learn some new things about our program, about how we work together and we can support each other, and then also how we can continue to be effective teachers when we're using new delivery methods that maybe we're not as familiar with as we have been in the past. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. Again, we're really excited that you're here, and I'm going to ask at this point, everybody, we are going to be issuing ELA credit for this training, obviously, and want to make sure that we have an accurate reflection of who is attending this morning. So we are taking attendance virtually, so we will capture that through everybody who is on the meeting this morning. However, I noticed that some of you may have names that are a little bit different than your official name when you've logged in. And so we would ask, if your name on your screen does not reflect your name of who you are, that you please comment in the chat section, which is at the bottom of your screen. There's a chat function. If you'll let us know who you are and what program you're from, we'll make sure that we get the ELA credit to you. So if you guys don't mind doing that, just take a couple of minutes, check that in over into the chat section, let us know your name and what program you're in, and then we will make sure that we issue ELA credits for today as well. So before, I think that is our housekeeping part of this, I'm going to share with you real quick just a couple of introductions. As I said, my name is Ronnie Nolan. I'm the director of KECSAC. We also have Sherry Kleske on the call this morning. You guys can probably see her. She's waving. She's our associate director. She's available if you guys have questions, and all of our contact information is available on our website as well. Katie Helton is on here. Katie, I called out a little bit in the comments section earlier. She had her mask on in her office by herself, still safety first. She does all of our PD training. She's our associate director for professional development and something else, and I'm sure I bungled the title, but it's a long one. And she does all of our PD stuff. She does all of our technical stuff. She's a great resource for you. And if you have questions about professional development or other things like that, that's who you can reach out to. I think Christine Smith is also on here. She's our budget and finance person, and you can probably see her somewhere in there. And we also have Cindy Held, who is our communications person, and she may be on here as well, although I don't see her right now. There she is. You can't miss her. She has glorious pink hair this morning. That's new, folks. So this is her debut. So we're glad to have her. And I've already mentioned Angela Austin and Peggy Shearer, who are our program improvement specialists, and they'll be talking with you a little more in depth a little bit later. So that's our full team here at KECSAC, and I am going to go into a little bit of an overview of what KECSAC is. And if you have questions, again, we noted that there is a chat feature here, so please use that chat feature if you have questions throughout this, and we'll make sure that we get to those. But I'll also let you know that I'm going to be sharing my screen, and I'll go in and do that and share just a PowerPoint presentation for about the next 25 minutes or so. Don't you guys love technology? That is exactly, it took me just a minute to get it there, but here we go. So those are, I'll share that with you guys, and then I'll just work my way through this. Again, we are the Kentucky Educational Collaborative for State Agency Children. Everybody calls us KECSAC. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about all the things that you would want to know and a little bit of other things. So we'll go ahead. Our agency is a true collaborative, and that is made up of a lot of different people from a lot of different areas. So we have representatives who come together from the Kentucky Department of Education, the Kentucky Department of Juvenile Justice, the Department for Community-Based Services, as well as the Department for Behavioral Health, Developmental, and Intellectual Disabilities. So what we did is when we created this collaborative years ago, and I'll talk a little bit about the foundational part of that, our General Assembly really came together and said, let's get all of the folks who have some area of responsibility for kids who are in the care or custody of the Commonwealth, and let's put those folks together at a table to make sure that they are talking about the holistic needs of students, and that we're not just focusing on one aspect of what students need to be successful, but that we're doing all of it. And so all of these different agencies came together to create the Kentucky Educational Collaborative for State Agency Children. Our mission is really, I think, a pretty simple one, and that is to ensure that all of our state agency children receive a quality education. We want to make sure that kids who are in these programs across Kentucky receive a quality education that is necessary, we believe, to help them overcome a lot of the barriers that they have experienced previously. We know, and you all know already in working with these students, that they have a lot of barriers that they need to overcome, and they need our assistance in helping overcome. Those can be academic barriers, those can be social emotional barriers, those can be mental health barriers, and a lot of other things. And so what we want to do is to create the wraparound services that are necessary through a collaborative approach to help our students be successful. And we do that by establishing relationships with those different state agencies that I just talked about. So we make sure that the Kentucky Department of Education is at the table, and we make sure that DJJ is at the table, and DCBS and behavioral health, and that we're all talking about what our students need to be successful. In addition to that, you already know that we partner with local school districts who provide the direct service to the students in our programs, and those are where you're employed now across Kentucky. So we're excited about that partnership as well. And then that goes even a step further beyond those state agencies to private agencies, which include those private childcare agencies that many of you are probably teaching at. In fact, about 65% of the students who are in our programs are served at those private childcare agencies, places like the Methodist Home for Children in Jessamine County, or we have All God's Children in Jessamine County. We have the Brooklawn program in Jefferson County, Ramey East Step Home in Boyd. And so we have programs like that all across Kentucky. And again, about 65% of our students are served in those kinds of programs. So we work with all of those agencies as well to make sure, again, that our students are receiving the quality education that they need. And that can look a little bit different than it would look in a traditional setting. Obviously, our students have some more critical needs because of things that have happened to them. We know that trauma is something that many of you have already been studying and been talking about. And we will talk more about trauma-informed practices and trauma-responsive practices as we move through our relationship together through this year and through future years. But we know that our students bring with them some experiences that make their educational experience very different than students who are in a traditional learning environment. And so how we respond to that is very different as well. We can't do a one-size-fits-all model. We know that traditional learning and traditional routes of education that has happened in a traditional school has not been as effective for our students as it needs to be. And so we have to provide our services a little bit different. And that's where you guys really come into this, is we are relying on your expertise, on your passion, and on your empathy to make sure that you are providing the types of services that our students need to receive a quality education in Kentucky. Again, we talked a little bit about this, but why this really matters. I think you already know, most of you have been in classrooms already. You've been meeting your students virtually already. But we know that national research shows that students who are in foster care or in state care are at a higher risk of dropping out of school. We know that, we've seen that. Many of you have probably already experienced that when you've had students who have come into your programs who maybe were not enrolled in a school prior to their enrollment in your school. And so we know that that is a huge risk for our students. We also know that our students are less likely to attend college, to attend and graduate from college than students who are in a traditional school. And in Kentucky, that has even larger implications because the overall Kentucky college going rate is lower than the national college going rate. And so when we further kind of exacerbate that by having a lot of students who are in state care who are not moving in that direction, then that also just compounds the problem as well. We also know that students in our programs have higher rates of suicide, homelessness, unemployment, and teen pregnancy. The research certainly bears that out, and you certainly will experience that as you are working with our students across the Commonwealth. We do know also that nationally, according to the Casey Family Foundation, Casey Family Services, that about less than 50% of students who are state agency children finish high school before leaving care. That is a national statistic that's looking at nationally where our students are. You will notice in your service to our kids that most of our students are 16 and 17-year-olds. The vast majority are 14 to 17. But we have a lot of kids who come into care in our programs toward the end of their high school careers. And what we have found is that those students who come into those oftentimes are significantly behind academically, have significant gaps with their credit achievements and with the number that they have, their progress toward graduation. And unfortunately, while we are doing everything that we can to make sure our students get the quality education they need and deserve. And we're doing that oftentimes in an accelerated rate. We still know that about 50% nationally don't actually finish before they age out of our system. We also know that, and you will find this as well, is that children and youth in out-of-home care experience 1 or 2 placement changes per year on average. We have seen in our research with the Kentucky Department of Education that we have some students who have significant, and while they are outliers in the data, it's important to know that we have students in Kentucky, some of whom have as many as 15 changes per year in their placement. Those are kids who are moving significantly, moving frequently around the state from home to a home, and oftentimes that means from school to school. We also know that when a student changes schools, that has significant impact on their academic outcomes. We know that they are getting further behind. And so we're working with our state partners to limit those number of transitions that students experience, but also working with you and really hoping that you will take the responsibility and that we will empower you to take the responsibility to make sure that students who come into your programs get the resources they need to move them academically to where they need to be. And we know that may mean that you are working with your treatment partners at the Department of Juvenile Justice or your private child care agency to make sure that they have the social emotional learning experiences that they need to get prepared to learn academically. We know that is part of it, but all of those things have to come together and kind of really converge so that we are making sure students are getting what they need. We also know that students in our program score 16 to 20 percentage points below others in state standardized tests. You'll see that as well. We know that in Kentucky, not just nationally, but in Kentucky, many of our students are 2 to 3 grade levels behind academically when they come into our programs. And so we want to make sure that they have that as well. I am seeing some comments pop up in the top. I can't see those right now because of my screen sharing, and it won't let me get to those. But I will get to those as we wrap up here. And then I'll just ask that Sherry and other staff who are on this, if you see particular questions, just shoot me a text because I can see my phone as we're doing this. And you can just let me know if there are particular things in there I need to address as we move through. We also know that your work makes a difference in the lives of our kids. We know that positive school experiences create an all-around child well-being. We know that children who are successful in school and that this helps them make them successful in school and life. We know that positive school experiences increase their chances for personal fulfillment and self-sufficiency. We know all of those things, those interventions that you're taking in your programs right now. And I don't think I can stress this enough. These are kids who have been marginalized and who have been left behind many times through no fault of their own. Most of our kids are in state care because they have been abused or neglected by someone else. And that has led to the situation that they are in. And our job is to make sure that we do what we need to do to ensure they're being successful. That includes high expectations academically. It includes making sure that we have the wraparound supports for our students that they need, and that we are doing everything we can through our efforts and through a partnership with our other folks to make sure that we get them where they need to be successful. Awesome. So the questions seem to be about posting the PowerPoint. We certainly will do that. I think Katie responded back in there, but we'll make sure that we post the PowerPoint as well so you have that and can refer to it later. And we'll also post it on our website under our program improvement resources and just make sure that you have that there as well. So a little bit of history of KECSAC. So in understanding all of those complexities that come into this, when we look at the types of students who come into state care, when we look at their academic needs, when we think about their social and emotional well-being, I think our General Assembly in Kentucky were actually way ahead of their time, way back in the day, nearly 30 years now. But in 1990, they passed KERA, which was a result of the Rose case, which was a Supreme Court case in Kentucky, which talked about equitable education services. And so that completely transformed education in Kentucky at that time. However, it did not address what happens to kids who are in state care, what happens to kids who are living in group homes, for example, what happens to kids who are in hospitals, what happens to kids who at that time, which was prior to the development of the Department of Juvenile Justice, what happens to kids who are living in a local jail where they're serving out a sentence or where they're awaiting trial. So back in 1992, they came back along and created KECSAC. They created our agency. And the reason I say they were ahead of their time is nearly 30 years ago, they came back and said, we need to get all of those folks at the table to talk about the overall holistic well-being of students and make sure that they're having conversations and that they're working together to address those educational needs. Nationally, just recently have we really started talking about holistic needs of kids and how we all work together to do that. So this, I think, was definitely ahead of their time way back in the day. In '94, they came back again and expanded that to include services to state agency children that were in private program placements. Intermediate services for developmentally disabled youth as well were added in. Then they came back in '96 when the Department of Juvenile Justice was created, and all of those kids who prior to that were inside a local community jail were moved into DJJ facilities where they were able to be isolated away from adult populations and really start some programming focus from the Department of Juvenile Justice about helping students be more successful and more of a rehabilitative model rather than a punitive model at that time. It was also then expanded at that same time to include therapeutic foster care kids and those youth in DJJ facilities. And then just a few years ago, it was expanded once again, where we went back to the General Assembly and asked for our students to have the option to pursue a GED. And so that was when the compulsory attendance age was raised to 18 in the state. Prior to that, we had a GED option, but when that was raised to that, you had to be 18 to be able to get a GED. So we went back and advocated for our students. Many of them, as I talked about earlier, come into our system at 16 and 17 years old. Many of them have too few credits to be able to graduate on time and certainly to graduate from high school before they age out of the system. And so we wanted to make sure that they had an additional route to receive a certification while they're with us. And so state agency children who are 17 years old may also take a high school equivalency test while duly enrolled in a diploma program. So the compulsory attendance age still applies. They must still be enrolled in a diploma track program, but they can also be duly enrolled in that GED prep program and be working toward taking that GED if you identify that that is in the best interest of that particular student. So that's kind of where we are history. State agency children, I've talked a lot about who that is. I've mentioned that a lot, and you may wonder, what does that mean? So there's currently 4 different categories that fall into place when we talk about a state agency child. We're working with students who are school age and are committed to or in the custody of the cabinet. That's a pretty simple one. We know that that applies to students who are in those private residential group homes. We know that those are in treatment centers, those who are in some hospital settings like Rivendell or like Peace Hospital and some others. So that's a pretty simple one. Then we have students who are placed or financed by the cabinet in a private facility. And so that includes many of those alcohol and drug treatment programs that are in Kentucky that are financed by the cabinet. And so they have a special kind of way for those students who are in that to also be under our purview. We also then have students who are school age and home and community-based services who are provided as an alternative to intermediate care facilities. And those are programs like Hazelwood and Oakwood in Kentucky. And I think those are the only 2. It also includes, obviously, those that are in DJJ programs, committed to or in the custody of. And those are both operated DJJ programs and the contracted day treatments that are operated by local school districts. And then just a couple of years ago, I think in 2018, we successfully advocated with the legislature to expand this to include students who are referred to a DJJ day treatment program by the local FAIR team. And so many of you know that Senate Bill 200, which was passed in 2014, created a Family Accountability Intervention and Response Team, which is commonly referred to as a FAIR team. And the responsibility of that team is to work with students and families to reduce the number of kids who are in out-of-home placements across Kentucky. We wanted to reduce the number of kids who are being sent into residential care, but we wanted to do that by having some community-based resources for those kids that would provide the necessary treatment without having a residential component to it. And so that's where those day treatments come in and that expansion of state agency child. It does not mean, however, students who are referred to the program by the local school district and don't have any involvement with DCBS or DJJ, they just think the local school district that maybe this kid needs some additional counseling. Maybe they need a smaller classroom setting. Maybe they need some other things. It also doesn't include kids who a judge, like if a kid goes in front of a judge and the judge is like, I'm not going to take any action today because I would like you to go to the day treatment program. That's all fine and dandy, and they can certainly do that, and the kid can be referred and the district can enroll, but unless there's an official court order with that, then that doesn't qualify them as a state agency child. It just qualifies them as a student who needs some additional supports. There's some other things here that we'll also share with you. I won't go through each one, but I want to make sure that there is that distinction between what are state agency children and what are just students who are in alternative education programs. And so that definitely, there is a difference between those two programs. There's a difference between what is a state agency program, which is where you are, and an alternative school. Alternative schools are district operated and they are district controlled facilities, and students who are placed there are placed there by the district. Whereas our programs, our school district teachers are assigned to the facility, but it's usually operated by a private child care agency or a state agency, like the Department of Juvenile Justice or some of those private hospitals or group homes. The big distinguishing feature here is that students who are in our programs and who qualify as state agency, they are placed into that program by by folks outside of the school district, including DJJ, the Administrative Office of the Courts, DCBS, behavioral health referrals, those kind of things. So there's definitely a distinction between the two. We are currently in 51 school districts. So while we have a small group of folks here today, again, this is kind of our new folks to our programs. We are in 51 districts across the Commonwealth, and you'll be getting a map of all of that. You can see that on our website of where these programs are located. There's 78 of them. Our current budget that we operate on and provide supplemental support to districts is just short of $9.5 million. And we see about 11,500 kids annually that come through our programs. So today in your programs, we probably have about 1,500 kids, is somewhere in that range, 1,500 to 2,000 kids who are sitting in seats today, whatever that seat may look like. And that could be in their cottage, it could be in their room in a hospital or drug treatment program. Wherever that desk is today, we have between 1,500 and 2,000 kids there. But over the course of the year, you will see 11,500 different kids who come through our programs. That means that we have a high turnover. It means that some of our kids stay for a very short period of time. Others stay much longer, depending on the type of facility that you're in. You may have students long-term, or you also may have students on a very short-term rotation. Some of those crisis management programs really are developed to help students establish normality and a sense of, and to reduce a sense of urgency around any behaviors or anything else that might be happening. So those programs typically are pretty short, but some are much longer. Again, we have residential group homes, day treatments, a lot of these, and you'll see, hopefully see which program, the type of program that you're in represented here. But you also see lots of other types of programs. So we're a very diverse agency. And while you may focus in on your particular program and the kind of program that you're in, please know that you're part of a much larger organization that has a lot of different types of services that are being offered to kids. You'll see as you work with these kids and throughout this year that students move between these programs frequently. You'll have some that come from mental health day treatments into a hospital-based program and then back into, maybe they'll go into a group home setting. So we have some transition between these. You'll definitely be interacting with more than just your particular type of program. We also have our administrative staff here, and so I introduced these folks at the beginning, but you can see a breakdown here of this. Also, as we post this, you'll have contact information for all of those folks. It's also in our directory, which you'll be receiving. We're located, by the way, at Eastern Kentucky University. That's where our offices are, and we're in the College of Education here. So we have a great collaborative partnership with the college to support our student learning and our teachers and the professional development that our folks, we think our folks need and that are reported to us by you out in the field. So all of this is also available, and I think you've already had an opportunity to say hello to those at the beginning. We also are governed by an interagency advisory group, and this is required in our statutes and regs. With those, as I said, all of those different agencies come together, KDE, DJJ, DCBS, behavioral health, all of those groups. We also have a state agency Children's School Administrator Association. So all of the administrators of the programs, and they all have an identified administrator. That may be a head teacher, it may be a principal, it may be a person at the district office. But all of those are members of that association, and they elect representation of a president and a president-elect, and both of those members serve on our board. We also have one superintendent, which currently is Doug Bennett from Laurel County Public Schools, that serves. And then we also have youth representation through a youth advisory board that Sherry Klusky, our associate director, oversees and coordinates. They meet 5 times a year, plus an end of the year retreat. They oversee all of our work and give us guidance on what we're supposed to be focused on. And so that information and contact for all of those folks is also on our website, and we'll make sure that you have that in your hands as well. All of those different agencies, as well as our administrators. And you'll probably also note as we move toward the end of this that educational accountability is a big issue for us. You will hear that as we talk about the program improvement process, about our monitoring process and what that looks like. But we also, as I said, we monitor all of our programs annually, and you'll hear about that. We have KECSAC requirements in there. We have best practices for alternative ed. And we also are aligned with the advanced ed standards that the Kentucky Department of Education uses as well. We also participate in all of the other educational accountability assessments that everybody else in the state participates in. So you'll see that as well. And we also get annual report cards that are posted on the Department of Education's website for state report cards. So you can also search your program's state report card and see where your students have been traditionally. Some of the challenges I think that you will experience, and many that you probably already have, and I've talked about, are frequent transitions within our programs. We have students who move a lot, and so that impacts records transfers. Obviously, Infinite Campus is where we keep all of our student records, and we need to make sure that you all are updating all of those records as soon as we have anything new to add. And that includes when students transition. We want you to include progress reports about where students are and how students are progressing in their classes, so that if they move while in the middle of a class, we don't lose the classwork that has happened. That is absolutely critical, because one of the things that we do not want to do is we don't want to be a reason that a kid loses a credit. We don't want to be that reason. We need to do everything we can on our end to make sure that our records accurately reflect what's happening, so that when students move frequently and they transition between programs, we're not losing any of their academic achievements. We don't want to be the reason that they don't graduate. I don't want that weight on my shoulder. I don't think you want that weight on your shoulder. And so we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we're responding appropriately to that. The other thing is that a lot of our students talk about, and this is talk about kind of their experience and perceptions of them. And one student I was talking to really put it in the idea of the scarlet letter. And when she was talking about her experience in state agency programs, she says she felt as though she had a scarlet letter on her when she returned back to her traditional school. So you'll see that our kids move from a traditional learning environment to our program and back, sometimes many times. But she really talked about when she walked back into her school that people remembered the student that she was before. and maybe some of the behaviors that had led her to being placed there. And while we have done an excellent job in our programs, and the challenge is to you is to continue doing that, while we help them move beyond the experiences that they've had, and we give them new skills for academics and for how to handle anger management and how to do a lot of other things. Oftentimes, folks who knew them before know the student that they were. And so it's a challenge, I think, for them to move beyond that perception of who they were into who they now are as a result of your work. We also have a huge funding gap in our programs. I told you we have about a $9.5 million budget. That's already $1 million less than it was just a few years ago. And that's at least $8 million less than what our districts have reported us it costs to do these programs. So we know that that's an impact. And the other thing that I talked about was academic preparation, which you will certainly find that typically most of our students in the data that we collect are about 2 to 4 grade levels behind in math and reading for their age. So when we look at the data about how old our students are, most of our students are 16 and 17-year-olds. Yet when we look at their grade level of what grade they're in, most of them are in 9th grade. And so you can see that there's a disconnect between our age and our grade level, which impacts where they are in their progress toward graduation. So we want to make sure that you're empowered to help them address those achievement gaps, and that we're doing everything on our end to make that happen. Here's my contact information on there as well. And so you have all of that. This is the general overview of who we are. We will share this PowerPoint out with everybody. I think I went just about right on time. If there's questions in the chat, I didn't get any additional ones from the staff who were sending me any, but that's kind of where we are. We're going to be together all day, so feel free to private message me. Feel free to email me at this address if you have additional questions. We want to make sure that you have the resources you need to be successful. And so I'm going to stop here, and we're going to take a little bit of a break. And so I'll be on here during the break, but everybody else, we're going to take a break until 9:45, and that is going to leave us with 8 minutes of break. So we're going to take an 8-minute break, and we'll be back promptly at 9:45. We will see you then. Thanks.
Ronnie, are you there? Ronnie, can you hear me?
He may have stepped away. I'll check on it.
Thank you.
There we are. I'm here.
Hey, Ronnie. I come up as Tim's iPhone on the screen. I couldn't get on the laptop for some reason. I didn't realize it was a Zoom thing, so I'm on my phone. I just want to make sure I get credit.
All right. Can you give me your last name, Tim?
Yeah, Keaton, Keeton.
Okay. And what program are you with, Tim?
Foothills Academy in Clinton
Perfect.
County.
Got it. Okay. Well, we'll make sure you get it.
Thank you,
And
sir.
anybody else who is listening right now, if you have not entered in your contact information over in the chat, please do so. Let us know your name and what program you're from, and we'll make sure that you get your credit for today. We know a couple of you got in a little bit late from when we first started, so just make sure that you include your name and your program over in the chat function, or send us a private message, and we'll make sure that we have you. Thanks, everybody. Just a reminder to folks, we have about 3 minutes till we start back our session at 9:45, about 3 minutes. All right, folks, welcome back. Hope you all enjoyed your 8-minute break. I'm going to try my best this morning to keep us on schedule because I know how important each of your time is, and how whenever we have these trainings, what we always hear from folks is we got good information, but we really miss being with our kids. We miss teaching. And so I want to make sure that we respect your time. And so we're going to move directly into our next session. Angela Austin and Peggy Shearer are our program improvement specialists. They are charged with the responsibility of providing program improvement site visits to our programs each year. So all of your programs will receive a site visit during the course of this year. And depending on what time of year that is, it may look a little bit different than it normally would. And they're going to talk about that this morning and share with you kind of the expectations as we move forward. We're really excited about it. You have a great team with Angela and Peggy. I think you'll find that they are extremely knowledgeable. They have a wide breadth of experience, a long service of educational service to kids in Kentucky and to our particular populations of students, where both of them served for many years. I'm sure as they begin their presentation, they'll tell you a little bit about their educational background and their experience to put in context. I think two of the most qualified folks in the field of education today who are working with us to make sure that we're providing the very best services to our students. So I will turn it over to Miss Austin and Miss Shearer and let them introduce themselves and take us from there. So the floor is yours, guys.
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I'm Angela Austin, and I cover the Western region from Jefferson County West and then our Northern Kentucky areas up there. And I am in the Owensboro area. And I taught at Davis County Middle School for 22 years. And then my heart was always with our kids, these state agency kids. I loved them from the beginning. And so an opportunity came up at Owensboro Day Treatment, and I thought, I think I'm going to try it. And when at 22 years, I was ready to retire until I moved to Owensboro Day Treatment, and it just breathed new life into me because I finally felt like I was home. And the first day of school, you go in and you do your information. This is who I am, and this is where I've been. And, I told the kids all that. And I said, and I had been at Davis County Middle School for 22 years, and I was super excited to be there. And I said to my class, I said, you know what? I don't think there are bad kids. I think there are kids that make bad decisions. And I'm so excited to be here with you. And I said, does anybody have any questions? And this one kid, I never forget, his name was Trevor. He raised his hand and he said, do you believe that line of crap? And I said, of course I believe that line of crap. I said, I believe that you all are good kids. You just kind of made some bad decisions. And I said, and the only difference between you and me is you got caught and I didn't. But, our kids have come to us with obstacles, and they have come to us with preconceived notions about them. And we have to look beyond that and just see our kids and offer them the best possible education that they can get. They deserve the same quality education as their counterparts that are sitting in public schools. And so that's why I'm so passionate about this. And that's why I am such an advocate for these kids, because they've already had 2 lumps and we don't need to give them another one. So that's a little bit about me. I did end up being the administrator at Owensboro Day Treatment and Owensboro Treatment Center for 4 years. And then I came to work for KECSAC in February of 2019. So that's all about me. How about you, Peggy?
I have a similar background. I live in Clinton County. I do the western part of the United States, the main state in Kentucky. And as a result, I get to see many of you, many of your programs. And so I'm anxious to meet you and get you to be a part of our family. My background comes from, I taught 20 years of English at Wayne County High School, was the assistant principal for 3 years there and high school principal for 8 years there, and retired. They opened a girls residential facility just up the road from me, And so I worked there for 7 years, teaching English and doing the administrative work. And then this is my 4th year, starting with KECSAC. So I, like Angie, have a wide breadth of training in trying to help with students and doing what's best for them. So we'll make sure that we get everything in. So Angie, let's just get started with what we're doing. Katie, are you putting out PowerPoint for us? Good girl, thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
So I guess we'll start by saying, wow, how things are different than they normally are. With all the virtual education, we're going to have to change as well and do some of our monitoring visits virtually. Hopefully that'll be confined to the fall. But on a if this were a regular, ordinary year, we would come into your facilities and do a monitoring visit. But with COVID-19 and all of the restrictions, some of you all will be receiving virtual visits. So we'll get down to basics on what a virtual visit would look like, as well as what a traditional in-person monitoring visit would look like. So Katie, if you'll click it, we'll see what we've got. Okay, so this year, we have something new going on. Of course, everything's new to you, but I want to talk a little bit about a new element of our monitoring, and that's a self-assessment. And this is something that is going to be sent to you from the office in the form of a Google form. And you are going to be asked to assess what your program, its strengths and areas for growth. And it's very user-friendly. I played with it and just pretended to be someone with the program. But it asks, it's based around what we consider to be best practices or recommended practices for programs like ours. And you're going to be asked to rate yourself in those areas and to provide some evidence as to why you've rated yourself as you have. And it's really important to make this a true reflective opportunity, not just something to click through quickly to check a box to say you're finished. Because Peggy and I will receive a copy of your self-assessment prior to our visit. And we want to see, because our visit with you guys is a snapshot. It's one day out of 210. And we may or may not see everything great that's going on. So, if we want you to give us an idea of what you think is going on that is great in your program, so that we have an opportunity to understand that. And again, we want it to be truly a reflection of your viewpoint of your program. You want to click me, Katie? All right, Peggy, you're up.
Okay, face-to-face instruction will be for those of you who are having in-class person-to-person instruction, and we will be there to do your observation as well. Our visit is to sort of look and get as Angie said, a snapshot of what you're doing. We will start with an entrance interview. We normally interview the head teacher, principal, whoever's running the program from your facility. We'll be interviewing several other people. We'd like to get sort of a broad view of what all is going on. And to do that, we sort of need to look at all of the different entities and how they fit into the puzzle. So we would do student interviews, teacher interviews. We would do classroom observations. Depending on the size of your facility, we like to see all of the school classrooms if we can. Some of you that have those larger programs, obviously that's not an option, but we'll see as many of them as we can. It's good for us to visit and talk, interview some of the ancillary staff, people like your counselors, facilities directors, depending on what kind of facility you have, as to what is appropriate, and you will know more about that in some instances than we can discuss today. And then we will spend some time reviewing your documentation. Documentation we'll talk about a little as we go. We hope it will be different for some of you this year. We would like for you to send that to us prior to our visit, if that's at all possible. We'd like for you to do that on Google Docs. Angie has done a little short presentation that's on our website. You can view that little website presentation. It's about 15 minutes about how to set up your documentation to send it to us. That way we can already look at that information before we get there and not have to spend our time doing the review of the documentation while we're there. We can do it in interviewing, looking at your facility, talking to you, and getting a clear picture of what's going on in your school. And then after we finished all of that, then we will do an exit interview with the principal, the head teacher, whoever is in charge of your group. So we spend a day. We're usually there at 9 o'clock, and we obviously try to get finished before your day ends, and usually we can manage that depending on the size of your facility and if there's any roadblocks along the way in terms of time. But we want to get a full picture so you can make a contribution to that as well. And if we can do anything while we're there that would help you, give you some advice about things, other programs that you could look at, maybe other software you could investigate if you're having troubles in a particular subject, we will try to help you with some of that as well. And we do see our role as being that of facilitator. So realize that we're not there to gotcha. We're there to try to help our students and do the best that we can to make this a good educational opportunity for our students. So that's sort of a preview of what to expect if we actually show up on your doorstep. Your facility has already gotten letters to tell you dates for those things. And hopefully, as Angie said, by spring at least, we'll be there in person. And we know that some of you are doing in-person instruction now. So we're excited to be able to be in some of your programs as we see them now. Okay, Miss Angie, Kate, if you'll scoot us over.
Okay, so most of us at this point are not doing face-to-face instruction, but doing some virtual instruction. And the requirements basically are the same, but what it's going to look like is what's going to be so very different. So again, with the documentation, whether it's virtual or a face-to-face, in-person monitoring visit, we still would love to have that documentation before we get there. It just gives us much more time to actually see your program and all the great things you're doing. So that's, just to reiterate what Peggy said, that's the basis behind that. We'll be doing all of those interviews via Zoom. And a week ahead, Peggy and I had kind of talked about and plan on giving facilities a call a week ahead of our monitoring visit and just kind of talk about, okay, who fulfills all of those roles in your facility? And we'll be securing email addresses, those types of things, so that we can invite all of the appropriate people to our Zoom meetings. So we're going to try to make this as seamless as possible, but please be patient with us because we're on a great big learning curve, just like you guys have been on a great big learning curve with all of this virtual instruction. But we'll still do our entrance interviews and we'll interview students. And from from where I sit in thinking about this, I think the student interviews are probably going to pose the greatest challenge for us. But we'll have to all put our heads together and figure out how we're going to make that work. But, you know, our students provide a lot of valuable information. I mean, it's all about the kids. And so it's very important to me to get their opinions and to see what their perception is of how their education's playing out in your facility. So even though that's going to be difficult, we're going to have to kind of wiggle it around and figure out how we can actually accomplish that. We're going to interview teachers to get their perspective on the program and how they're meeting the needs of students. Your ancillary support staff, we're still going to interview them to get a bird's eye view into what treatment looks like, or you know, those types of issues. And again, we will conduct an exit interview. And I want to talk just a little bit about that exit interview because, you know, Peggy kind of hit entrance interview and talking about, you know, your demographics and those kinds of things. In the exit interview, what we like to do is talk about what we saw that day, and talk to you about, well, was this a typical day? Is this typically what it looks like? And let me just tell you, if Peggy and I show up, there's going to be some sort of cog in your gear, so to speak. If there always is, it never fails. We show up and there's some issue. But that's okay, because we've both been in facilities and we understand that things happen. And, you know, we've had issues ourselves in our programs that we were in leadership positions. So it's okay, but no, if we're there, something's going to happen. But that's okay, because, I mean, we're there to see a typical day. And if that's what happens on a typical day, that's okay. It's not a big deal. I know I was at one of my facilities and they had a great big deal and everybody was all tore up about it. And the principal said, she was at a facility, she understands, it's okay. And it is. So in the exit interview, we'll talk about how do you think your day went? How do you, these are some of the strengths that I will talk to you about, strengths that I saw. And I'll also talk to you about some areas of growth, places where I think you can grow your program. But like Peggy said, this is not an opportunity for a gotcha. No. It's not that. It's all about looking at what you do well and then taking what could be improved and giving you some support and ideas to maybe take your program to that next level. So please don't get all bent out of shape about, you know, our visit, because again, it's not a gotcha. It's we're here to help. And, you know, there's one thing I want to iterate before I send it back to Peggy. And that is, our titles are program improvement specialists. They're not auditors, it's not monitors. So we want to be a resource for you to help you to make your program even better than what it already is. So that's kind of where we are with that. Katie, would you like to hit the next slide, please?
We wanted to spend just a few minutes talking about some of the things that we will be looking for when we come to do our visit. One, obviously, is instructional minutes. Just like a regular school, we want to make sure that you're covering your 360 daily instructional minutes. Obviously, that's required by the state. And so that's one of the things that we'll look for. We do want to see blended learning, curriculum-based instruction. We know that lots of you are doing virtual now, so that's a little bit different to look at. But we would like to have not all sit and get if we can do that. We'd like to have not all computer if we can do that. Obviously, we know that we learn different learning styles, need different kinds of things, and we want to make sure that we're covering the basis of what we can do for our students. So we're looking for a balance in your computer instruction versus your direct instruction. And again, we do realize that with all of the virtual that we're having to do, that will look a little different than it would on any normal day. Number three, we're looking for the rate of computer-based instruction progress. And that may sound kind of silly because you say, well, kids work at different paces, and we understand that. But we also understand that we've had in the past some students who have completed a full course of computer instruction and earned a credit in a week. Well, I just don't see that as being very viable. If you compare that to any other kind of education that a student's getting across the state, I don't see anybody else in regular schools earning credits in that length of time. Now, I know that our students are behind for the most part, and we want to help them get through, and sometimes we sort of turn our head, but you know, I've been in many classrooms where I've watched students and they don't even read the questions. They click, we reset, they click again, we reset until they get it right, and the kid doesn't know the information, and that's a disservice to that child. And even though we think we might be helping in terms of giving them credits, we're not helping them. We've got to help them learn the material. We want them to have the same education that everybody else has. And so as a result, we want to make sure that they're actually learning the content, not just learning how to guess well. So sort of gauge that, pace that, make sure that you're thinking about how quickly they're going through that material and if they actually know the material or not.
Peggy, can I interject right here for just a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
And as Ronnie was talking in his intro, he was talking about, you know, we have 16 and 17 years old students who are severely credit deficient. And, you know, we do want to do everything we're big enough to do to help them graduate. But as Peggy was saying, we can't just let them play guessing games and have the information. But many times students are being placed in credit recovery. And I'm kind of doing air quotes with that because true credit recovery is offered or should be offered when a student has already sat for a class and not passed. Credit recovery should not be offered just in order to speed up the credit earning possibilities there. Okay, so when we're doing credit recovery, let's just ensure that it is true credit recovery and not an accelerated curriculum.
Very good point. Very good point. Number 4 says that students should be taking all core content classes every day to ensure that the student will be prepared to fit back into their homeschool when they return. And the reason we've included that one is that very often we'll go to schools and students will, when you ask them what they're doing during the day, well, I work on English all day. I'm going to earn that credit, get that credit finished, and then I'll move on to something else. Well, that's good and well, and I understand that you want the kid to be happy, and if they don't like something else, you know, they're going to be less likely to work on it. However, what happens if they go back to a regular school, they don't fit in, because if I'm the counselor and they show up on my doorstep in February and you say, okay, so did you earn any credits the first semester? Yes, I earned 2. What in? Algebra 1 and English 1. Well, then what are they going to do with them? Because you've already finished English 1. You don't fit in English 2 yet because you haven't, you're not at the semester to start there. And it's just a struggle to try to fit them in. And so we isolate them even more and cause them to stick out in the classrooms because they end up being in a class with not their grade level or not their age peers because we've allowed them to do something they wanted to do instead of doing all 4 core content classes. So all students, just like any class would have, an English, math, science, and social studies. Now I know as they're older, they get to be juniors or seniors, they may have finished all of their science classes or all their social studies, but basically they need to be taking the 4 core content classes unless they are older students. So please don't allow your kids to just take math because they like the math and not work on any other subjects. So let them have a balanced curriculum just like their peers do across the state. Number 5 talks about grades and transcripts. Please make sure those grades and transcripts are kept up to date. We talked about how transient our students are very often. We have students, and if you've been there, when you've been there a little while, you'll understand what I'm talking about. They will come in and you put them in classes only to discover they've already had that class, or they'll tell you they've had that class and they actually haven't. or they'll have been in a school where they've taken, they have a credit in English 1 first semester, English 2 first semester, English 3 first semester, but they have no English 1 second semester or English 2 second semester. Or you'll have kids that have taken, 16 PE credits and have no core content classes. So monitor those grades and those transcripts and keep them up to date, but try to keep them on track with their peers, keep them on track with what they need for graduation. And that way, when they do move to whatever school they leave you for, then they'll be prepared to fit in and be more of a normal kid than they might be otherwise. The next thing talks about ILPA. If you are not familiar with ILPA, it's an individual learning plan. It is a requirement, and so it should be fully implemented, and it should be entered into Infinite Campus. Someone I'm sure in your school knows how to do that. It's just a little section on Infinite Campus. It's very quick to fill out. It does help your child organize where they are, what they lack, what they're going to do, and how they're going to get to that graduation point and have goals in life. So that's one of the things that we look for as well.
Just a little aside here, if a student has an IEP, then an ILPA is not required. So just so you know, your students receiving special services with IEPs will not have to have one of those.
Very true. Miss Katie? The number 7 says new graduation requirements. All of us are trying to figure out ways to manage those because they're not all things that we are used to teaching. And so make sure that you're addressing those things. Look at those new graduation requirements. Make sure that your kids are meeting those needs, that they've passed the civics test, that you've entered that civics test into Infinite Campus. Make sure that they are taking some kind of financial literacy class. Angie and I have put out to your schools several resources of things that they might be able to use if you don't know a way of doing that. The State Department is putting out some new information on financial literacy. We'll be getting some things out to you a little bit later about that, but they're putting out some really good information that will help you with that particular class. Workplace principles, make sure that you're covering all of those things that are required by the state that didn't used to be by the state. Sorry. Number 8, transition. What is your plan for assisting your student with a successful transition? Make sure that their transition into that new school is smooth. You know what an ordeal it is to try to go someplace new that you've not been, new people that you haven't, that you don't know. So provide them with all the information that they need, what you can anyway, but help them with all sorts of things about, give them a copy of their transcript. Even though the school can't officially take that as their transcript, it gives them a starting point. It helps the kids be able to articulate what they have taken, what they have credits in, what they don't have credits in. They need to know how to read their transcript. They need to know about how many credits they lack and what they lack toward graduation. So help those kids make that transition as smooth as possible. As Angie pointed out, these kids have already had lots of hurdles to overcome. Let's not be one of those stumbling blocks in helping them finish that graduation requirement or finish that educational process. RTI, whatever your program is doing in terms of RTI, let us see what you're doing. Every student needs some help sometimes in different situations. So let us look at your process and what you're doing and how that looks and how that functions in your school, how you get that set up for new students, those types of things. So remediation in that form. Number 10, special services. Who's responsible for progress monitoring? How often does that go on? And I know that sometimes kids are not aware of what you all do sometimes, but make sure that the kid knows what classes they've got coming up or what they need to do to finish a particular class. ARC meetings, make sure that they're being handled. Parent participation or lack thereof, make sure that you're addressing that. Any kind of special services, counseling, progress growth in terms of behavior, all of those kinds of special services, make sure that you're taking care of those. Professional development. I know that when I started at Otter Creek, finding professional development for my teachers was hard because it needed to be something that was appropriate for them. You know, the new program that was starting at the local high school was not something that my teachers at Otter Creek needed to know about because they weren't utilizing that particular program. KECSAC has really stepped up and has done marvelous things in trying to provide you with PD opportunities. If you'll go to the website, Katie's been posting some new things lately. I've done some science things that she's posted. Angie did the training on Google Docs. We've got several other things posted, and you can get PD credit from there, but it's geared toward our students, and that's what we need to be able to do, is find help in working with our particular students because they have different needs than lots of other kids do. Angie, you want to comment on any of those? Okay, Katie, moving on. Pre and post assessment, it's a requirement that you do pre and post assessment. Utilize that information that you get from that documentation. Every program has their own idea about how to do that. We don't have a standard one that we do, but do a pre and post assessment so that you can see some gains, use that data as to where they're going. How often you use that data obviously depends on how quickly you have those kids or the turnover is, but utilize that data to improve the educational quality of your program. Suspensions, just make sure that you're utilizing the rules about suspensions that can't be more than 9 days. So make sure that you are not suspending students for longer than is required, preferably not suspending them at all. You know as well as I do that while they're suspending, they're not learning anything. So if you can utilize some other kind of tactic to try to help your students, that would be a better deal. We realize that occasionally there are reasons why you need to suspend, but be careful about the typical length. PBIS or some form of PBIS in terms of your intervention program. You need to have one in place. It needs to work in unison with the local staff. Make sure that your line of what you're doing and your intervention and theirs work together so that you have a unified program to work with the students. They need that consistency. One of the main things, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to interject here. The programs that I go into that have a successful PBIS intervention system, the kids can quote it chapter and verse. I mean, they can tell you exactly what, you know, is required. A lot of times, and I really like this, students are given are allowed to give input into some of that, like what rewards they would like to see, what they're willing to work for, but also, you know, in setting up the ground rules, you know, your norms. So those programs, I go in and I can ask the kids, hey, what tell me about your reward system here. And the ones that are really working well with it, the kids can tell it to me chapter and verse.
Okay, carry on, Miss Angie.
Oh, you want me to go? Sure. Okay. Program improvement plan. Each year when you submit your MOA, you are also submitting as a part of that a program improvement plan. And what that plan does is it tells us, and it's again a good reflective tool. It tells us what do you plan to work on this year? You know, And it's not just some willy-nilly, I think I'll work on this or that. It really is a document that's based on a needs assessment that you have conducted to kind of determine what instructional direction you need to work toward this year. And again, it really doesn't need to be willy-nilly, but very intentional. And so this program improvement plan should have at least one academic goal. Now, you can have behavioral goals as well, but really and truly, there needs to be at least one academic goal. And I want you to think SMART goals as you're developing this. You know, it needs to be measurable. It needs to be time sensitive. So you all as first year administrators, you may, well, and teachers, but speaking to the administrators, because typically you guys are the ones that develop that, you may be working with someone else's. So let me encourage you here at the beginning of the year to get that program improvement plan out and look at it, see what it's all about, but not just for you, but also share that with your staff and teachers. You need to be aware of what it is, because this is what you as a facility as a whole are working toward. And so this is something that you guys have determined that is a need. You know, this is kind of what you set your goal for the year. So, you know, it's good for everybody to be on the same page. So make sure that you guys, number one, know what it is. And I know that seems silly, but with some of you being first year, it may be something that somebody else wrote. So be aware of that, know what it says, share it with the teaching staff. So again, think SMART goals, measurable, time sensitive. Now, there's another document I want to talk about, and it's called the Implementation and Impact Check. When I was a first year administrator, this confused the daylights out of me. I was like, what in the world? But what this Implementation and Impact Check does, it takes a look at your program improvement plan from the previous year. So the ones you would look at this year would be not the 2021, but the 1920 program improvement plan. And you would take a look at that, reflect on your year, and say, did the strategies that I set out to use to work toward my objectives in my program improvement plan help? Were they successful? Did I see the growth I was expecting? So you're also going to be producing a program, an implementation, goodness, I can't even talk, implementation and impact check from the 1920 school year. So just be aware that you're going to be asked for that, and understand that it's from the previous school year, and checking to see if, when you implemented those strategies, if it had a positive impact. So be ready to start looking at that, and reflectively look at that and see if you need to change that maybe again, or if it had the desired effect, if that's something you want to continue to do. So that one's kind of a biggie as far as getting your head wrapped around that. Katie, will you click me? Okay, safety. That seems to be a huge issue, even more today than it has previously. We've talked about safety in lots of ways. You know, every month you have to have a tornado drill, a fire drill. You have to have earthquake drills. And now, I hate it, but we have to have lockdown drills. Safety can is really huge. If you don't believe it, ask the superintendent of Marshall County Public Schools. He came to our summit last year and talked about the incident that he had at Marshall County. And he was going through all of that safety stuff. And as I was listening to it, I was thinking, if they did not have that safety plan enacted, and if everybody wasn't aware of that safety plan, things could have turned out very, very differently. So we really need to ensure student safety. And I know that some of us well, most of us are in somebody else's house. Like we're in a hospital. Our school is housed in a hospital. And you say, oh, well, that's the hospital staff's responsibility. Or we're housed in a DJJ building. Well, that's the DJJ responsibility. Well, in a sense it is, but it is our responsibility to be with our partnering agency and to know what the safety measures are, to know what the requirements are, and to help them so that we can all be on the same page. God forbid something should happen. So we really need to take student safety super seriously. And now we have student safety as far as a global pandemic. So now we have to think about, okay, when we come back, are we wearing masks? Are our desks socially distanced? Are we doing our proper cleaning protocol? So safety is one of those things that, you know, you think, yeah, we're doing it, but we really need to be very intentional, very thoughtful, because it's huge. Safety is huge. I mean, these kids are being entrusted to us. So we need to make sure we're doing everything we're big enough to do to keep them safe. And then the final thing I want to talk about is records. You all may or may not know, but our kids tend to be very transient, and they come and go and very frequently. And for some of you all that are in a psychiatric facility or a hospital setting, you may only have kids for a day or two. But it is very important to still request records, import records on each kid, because the first person who does not import a record into Infinite Campus, say, you know, they're only going to be there for one day and then they're moving someplace else, and you say, oh, well, if they're just here for a day, I'm not going to import. Well, what happens is the chain is broken. And so the next person that tries to request records for that student is up a creek without a paddle, because the chain has been broken when someone didn't request records and import them into Infinite Campus. Okay, so that is vitally important. And our regulations say that records have to be sent within 5 days. But really and truly, we want to be better than that, because you don't want a student sitting in your school for 5 days not being sure about what classes they need to be in. So until you request those records, you won't have that information. And until you get those records, you won't have that information. So it's very important that as soon as a student comes in, request them. If you know in advance they're coming, go ahead and send a records request, maybe with a fax. So you won't have, you'll have a paper copy, you won't have Infinite Campus, but you will at least know what classes the student needs to be, in what classes the student needs to be enrolled. And on the opposite end, sending. Please send records quickly to a school who's requesting them, because now the shoe's on the other foot. Now somebody else is sitting with a student there and they need to know, okay, what do I need to do with the student? What you know, I need to look at their transcript. I need to know what classes they need to be in. So we really need to be able to get those records requested, sent, and released in a timely manner for the benefit of our students. And here's the thing, as Ronnie was talking about earlier in his introduction, we have students that might be in 5, 6, 7 programs in 1 year. And they never seem to be anywhere long enough to earn a credit. But sometimes when I was an administrator, I had to do what I called Frankensteining, because if let's say a student had been with Peggy at Otter Creek, and then they had been to Moorhead Youth Development, and then they came to me, all within a semester. They were never in any one place long enough to earn a credit. But if you look collectively at all of the work that student did, it's possible that they may have earned a half credit in the courses they were enrolled in had they stayed enrolled in those same classes. I mean, a lot of times these students are transferred facility to facility to facility through no fault of their own. And so we can't be the reason these kids don't earn credits. So sometimes you have to play detective, and that's okay because that's what we do for our kids. So Peggy, anything else about that? And then I have one more little thing I want to talk about. Anything about records or safety?
Also realize that sometimes when your kids come in, if you ask them if they were in somebody's school for 3 days, they think they ought to have a credit in that class. So realize that their view of what they need to have for credits and what they should have is not always the same. But do investigation and make sure that the kids get what they earn.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk about is back to our virtual monitoring visit. I'm sorry, it just left me, but I've got it back now. But if your teachers and you teachers, if you all are doing virtual classes, and what I mean by that is you're either Google Hangouting with your students or Zooming with your students, and you have a teacher actually teaching a lesson. If we could see that, that would be awesome. I would love to sit in on a virtual class. If that is something that is available to us on the day of our monitoring visit, and that way we can still see what your, how you guys are teaching and what your lessons look like. So if that's a possibility, when we call ahead and talk about again, we're going to call like a week ahead, and we can talk about that. And if that's something that maybe we can do, that would be awesome. Peggy and I would both love to be able to sit in on a virtual class if that's going on that day. So those are the things that you can look for during our visits. And I saw that Katie said this whole PowerPoint was also going to be posted to the website. So if you can go back and look at it again. And I was always real famous for, after it was all over with, I would say, I wish I'd have asked them. Well, you can still do that. Shoot us an email, give us a call, and we'd be happy to talk about any of these things with you.
And there is a documentation slide at the back of this that has the information about the side document that tells what kinds of things you could or should support your documentation with. That your documentation does need to be kept for 5 years. So just store that somewhere and keep that up. Mentions the self-assessment, which is new. So you'll get in on the ground floor for that. But that information about the documentation is in the slide presentation, that last slide as well. So Angie, I'll just say before I quit that we're happy to have you all with our programs. We know you're there because you're going to do what's best for our kids. That's what we're all here for. That's what Angie and I try to work on, is to make sure that we're providing our kids with the possible best education that they can have that is comparable to their peers across the state. So we all want the same thing for our kids. And we appreciate you working hard toward getting that done.
Okay, I want to say one thing about first of all, I'm going to amen everything Peggy just said. She said that so eloquently, but we are tickled to have you guys with us. And but I do want to say one thing about the documentation. In the side document, it'll give you the standard, it'll give you the indicators, it'll give you a good description of it, and at the bottom, it'll give you possible sources of evidence that would be appropriate for that standard and indicator. And some of them, there are several places where you could use one piece of evidence. And, it's okay to use one piece of evidence a couple of times, but we don't want to see your mission statement 7 or 8 times. So just please try to use a variety of different evidences within your documentation, and that would make us happy campers. And again, I'm so tickled that you guys are with us and look forward to meeting each of you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all so much. I know that we have the chat box open. We do have a few minutes before we have to end this session. So if you have questions about this process, feel free to drop those in over on the chat section. Also, Katie just posted the side document, which is the standards, indicators, descriptors, and evidence document that we use for our program improvement site visits. That's over there. Also, just a reminder, we will be posting the PowerPoint, and we are also recording all of these sessions, and they'll be posted on our website as well. So you'll have that as a resource. I do want to ask a question to get us started in kind of a question area here. Could you guys talk a little bit about the process of what happens after the visit? Tell us about what feedback our programs get and what that looks like so that our programs know what to expect.
I'll start. Obviously, we do an exit interview, and as Angie mentioned when she talked about exit interviews, we sit down with you and talk about what kinds of things we've seen that we think are really, really impressive. We'll also talk about things that we see that maybe are not your best feature, and ways that we can help you grow with those particular aspects of your program. And the reason we do it while we're there is because it's a good opportunity for you to say, oh, well, if that's what you're looking for, I didn't give you the information for that. So sometimes it's just an oversight that you didn't do that you can correct while we're there. So it's a good way to catch up on anything that we have a misrepresentation from the documentation or from our visit. So that's a good way to do that exit. Then we send that information in, and then in about 3 weeks to a month, you'll get a paper copy with all of that information documented. But also, as Angie said, anytime that you want to call and talk to either one of us or email either one of us, we'll be happy to help you out with anything that you can do that way. But the documentation, if you can get that to us early, that will help us. And then the feedback will come in the post conference, as well as a paper version of that, or an electronic version actually of that will be sent to you. Angie, did I miss anything there?
I don't think you did. I think you covered it really, really well. But again, I think the way I do my exit interviews, I always hated waiting. I wonder what he thought, or I wonder what she thought. I wonder what's going to be on my report. So I'm going to be very upfront with you. When I do my exit interview, I already have developed my list of areas of strengths and my growth areas. So whatever we have discussed in the exit interview is what you will find on your report. I don't like surprises. And, I don't like that. And so anything that we discuss in our exit interview, that's what your report's going to be. So just keep that in mind, knowing that that's where we are. But yeah, it usually takes about 3 to 4 weeks to receive your formal electronic copy of your evaluation.
And Angie, I think you make a good point there, and that those exit interviews are designed to give you the information in kind of an immediate feedback circle. If we see things that are glaring issues and that we think, these are things that you can improve on to improve outcomes for students, we don't want you to wait 4 weeks to start working on that. So we're going to immediately during that day talk with you about, hey, have you thought about this? Let's look at this kind of this growth opportunity for you and your staff and your program, and what does that look like? And let's develop a plan together during that about setting the ball moving forward, so that we don't have situations where something continues to happen for another 4 weeks until you get your electronic report back. We do not want that to happen. So I would just put that out there. Peggy and Angie, if you guys could, one more thing before we transition and get into some other questions. Tell me a little bit about what kind of technical assistance you all have provided as a result of the program improvement process. Maybe give an example of some follow-up work that you've done in the past and what that might look like for our programs moving forward.
In the past, I've had a few programs that would have questions, not that it was necessarily a blaring problem that they had or a growth area that they had, but they knew it was something that they needed help with. And very often I could hook them up with a program that was doing that well, or a software program or a couple of software programs that they might investigate. I know that money is limited, so obviously we always try to look for free things or free things that we can then offer that will fill that void that maybe they're missing. And then sometimes, to me, it's easy. I'm a visual person. And so if I can actually see something that's going on, and so sometimes I've even facilitated helping a program go to visit another program to see how they were doing something that worked really well for them. So whatever it takes to try to help you with any areas of growth that you need, whether it's one that you know that you need or one that Angie and I see, we'll be happy to try to help you hook up with whatever we can to fill that void.
That's the last one is the one I was going to mention. You know, sometimes we feel like we're on an island because, you know, our programs are very different than public schools. And, you know, you try to talk to somebody in a public school about what you have going on in your classroom in a facility like one of ours, and they just look at you like you got three heads. And so, you know, one of my greatest satisfactions has been being able to say, you know, you're having this issue. Why don't you, here's somebody in another program that teaches the very same thing that you do. It's the very same type of program. Why don't you give them a call, you know, and see how they do it. And that's the beauty of going into all the different types of programs and all the different programs we go into is we learn that how different programs do things. And we've learned who does things well, and we learn who we can match people up with as sort of a mentoring type situation. So, you know, those are the kinds of things we've done. And I've had people call me about, you know, we're having trouble with our instructional minutes. We just can't seem to get over the hump. What can we do? Can you help me look at my schedule? I've had questions about my 210 days, those 33 extended days, what can they look like? And just, you know, basic information that just, you know, they're unaware of or need more clarification on.
Two other points, if I can make real quickly. You know that if you're an administrator, KECSAC has already hooked you up or will be hooking you up soon, if they haven't already, with a mentor for that particular purpose, because there's lots of questions that very often you have when you first start in a program, and that mentor will serve as a good resource for you to know who to contact. A second thing is that this year in KECSAC, we would like to offer some PLCs, program improvement or program learning communities. And we know that across the state or across the district, they have all kinds of PLCs, and that's one of the things that we've looked at in other programs. Except to me, it's sort of silly to expect you as say an English teacher to go to the high school and meet in their PLCs, because what you're talking about and what they're talking about have nothing to do with each other. And so we would like to be able to offer some PLC opportunities virtually that would allow you to maybe cover some of the topics that you have interest in, and we can discuss some of those questions or issues that you have based on the type of facility that you're in. So we've sort of tried to work out a preliminary view of who has the same types of programs, and we'll try to set up some PLCs coming up before too long. Ronnie, if you want to address that even further, that might be more clarification.
No, I think that you covered that very well. So we are working with our administrators, and we'll be next Friday, I think, well, in 2 weeks, we're meeting with the administrators at the School Administrators Association, and we'll be talking about the PLCs and kind of what those will look like as we move forward. So there will be opportunity for folks to network across the state with programs that are similar to them, so that you do have kind of a network of support that's being built across the Commonwealth, and you're not so isolated in some of our programs. you all know that some of our programs have one teacher in one program that serves kids 6th through 12th grade in the same classroom. And certainly we know that that presents some very unique challenges that teachers in traditional learning environments don't have. And so we want to make sure that you're connected with folks who are doing similar work to you and that can answer questions and be a resource as well. So thank you all this morning for all of that. I know that there will be additional questions. We have posted over in the comments section a link to that side document on our website, and Katie has also expanded that a little bit to show that it's under the KECSAC forms, samples, and templates. There's some documents under there. The side documents are under there. The program improvement tool, which is the site visit tool that we use when we come to the programs, or virtually, is there as well. Recommended practices and some other resources are also on that site that probably be helpful to many of you. Also, as Christine said, anytime that you have questions, our team is available, and we would be happy by email or phone, and all of that information is on our website as well as on our PowerPoints today. You'll be able to contact us at any time and let us kind of reach out and help you and connect you with what resources you need. But we appreciate you all. We know that this is a challenge. And if it wasn't a challenge, if you all weren't up for a challenge, you wouldn't be here. We know that. So we know we have the right people at what is it they say, the right people in the right seats on the right bus. So we want to make sure that we're doing what we need to do for our students, and we are excited that you're here. I hope that we have conveyed that this morning. We are eager to partner with you to have exceptional student services for our kids, and that's really our end goal. So we appreciate you being here. We are going to wrap up this session, and we're going to move into another little break. And then we're going to start back at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Central Time with our final presentation, which is on best practices in distance education and virtual learning with Stella Pollard from Franklin County Public Schools. So that'll be 14 minutes from now. We're going to take a little break. Again, Angie, Peggy, and I will be on here. If you have questions, you can also direct email us in the chat, or send us direct messages by email, or just jump online and ask. So we're here if you need us, and we look forward to seeing you back here in 14 minutes for our next session. Thank you.
All right, everybody. We got a few minutes before 11, and we will get started right at that time. But I do have a resource that I'd like to share with everybody too. So welcome. I hope you all have had a good morning so far. Lots of learning going on, sharing stuff out.
Thank you so much for joining us, Stella. This is Katie with KECSAC.
Hi, Katie. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Let's see. Katie, can I share a link with you? For some reason, my chat window won't pop up on my Zoom. Or if I share, if I just put a bit.ly up here, does that make sense? I want everybody to be able to have this resource if they would like it. Or we could share it out after the session. Either way would be fine.
Sure. If you send me a link, I'll post it in chat.
All right. I don't know why it's not working.
Probably because you're sharing your screen. I have trouble when I'm screen sharing doing other things.
I could stop sharing. All right. Yeah, you're right. You're right. There we go. Okay. So I posted that link to the resource inside of the chat box. If you all want it, feel free to take it. Make yourself a copy. It's going to have tons of resources on there for you and your teams that you can share, and hopefully it will be helpful to them. It's 11 o'clock. Are we ready to get started? I think I am. All right. So what I've put together here is a virtual learning toolkit. And if you are looking at this resource at any time after today, this video will walk you or the members that you share this with, it will walk you through how to use this toolkit. So let's get started. It's also got a little key. I just thought that was a little cute. It might be a little extra. So when we think about teaching digitally, there are some tools that are universal that are going to be helpful to the folks that we're serving or the students that we're serving. And right now, I know that things are so overwhelming. Like you probably feel like your brain is just going to explode with everything that's been thrown at you and everything that is just going on. And if you do, don't try to learn everything at once and share this with the staff that you are working with. Don't try to cram everything into your brain at one time because it's going to be too much. So what this toolbox will do, it breaks things down into 3 separate layers. You have your basics, and the basics are going to be those things that you can share with your team that are going to make your virtual learning experience be as smooth as possible. So they might need to know like how to have a background in like how to use the Google Drive or Google Docs. And a lot of people already know that. But the virtual learning must-haves are going to be in this middle column, and that's what I really want to focus on. And this is what's been successful for Franklin County Schools this week, because we went back on Wednesday and our teachers are using these few tools here, and they are making things be so much easier for the students that we serve. So we have the introduction to Google Meet. And later, if you ever want to click on that, it'll take you to a video that will show you the basics of Google Meet and how to use that for virtual instruction. And I'd like to show you a few things for that today, if you think that would be helpful. But I have all of these resources here that will help your staff get used to Google Meet. And if you click on one of the links, it'll open up in a new tab. And some of these are cheat sheets and everything that you can print off and give to the teachers or even to the students. I have some for students as well. And it will show you how to utilize each of the features that are on that virtual learning toolkit. So there's some for getting started, and then there's one for students too. And I know that students are really used to Zoom or they're really used to other features within G Suite, but they might not understand how to use whatever platform it is that you are using with your kiddos. So make sure that you do take the time to explain to them like, oh, this is how Zoom works, or oh, this is how Google Meet works. If your district is using Zoom, I have some Zoom resources. I didn't put them on this toolkit, but I will be more than happy to share those out with you. So make sure that whatever platform that you're using with your kiddos, that they just understand how to do it. And tell the teachers, like, if you know how to share your screen and you know how to provide resources to your kids, that's really all you need. The other stuff is extra and it's glitzy and it's cool, but simple is better for the kids during this time. So I'm going to go back to the toolbox. Have you all, if you've never heard of Screencastify before, Screencastify is a Google Chrome extension that you can download to your Chrome browser, and it will allow you to record what's going on your screen. It is perfect. It is the how-to for using mini lessons within Google Classroom or however you're getting videos to your kids. So kind of like what we're doing right now, where you're able to see my screen and you're able to hear me talk, that's what Screencastify does, except when you're doing it live, sometimes you have questions, sometimes there's distractions going on in the background, and Screencastify will allow you to take your browser and make that little video without all of those distractions. because we know that students have an attention span. Well, I say students, we know that everybody, I know myself included, we have an attention span that is very, very small. And if we could take a 5-minute video and share instruction with them, then this resource will allow them to do that. So I'd like to show you just some how to use that, because I really feel like Screencastify is the thing that it's like the glitter, or it's like your best way to get resources made for your kids. So this is how it works. You'll just pick, like, if you want to show a browser tab or the desktop where you can see everything going on your screen, or they could even use the web camera and make a video of themselves writing on the board. You have tons of different resources that you can do. And when you hit record, it will save this recording to your screen. So right now it's going to be recording everything that's going on my screen. I could be showing the kids how to do something in Google Classroom, or I could show them how to use a resource or an internet or a website that I'm using for my lesson for the day. And when I click the extension again, I press stop, I'm going to have a preview window, and there's a lot of things that I can do with that. I can copy the link from my Google Drive. I can publish to YouTube, but right now for virtual learning, the best way is just to press share to classroom, and you can make an assignment directly from there. And I know I'm going fast, so if you all have any questions, please feel free to ask those and I will get you some answers. There's a lot of stuff on that virtual toolkit, but it will be there for you for however long you want. But you can just press go and it will automatically post that inside of your classroom. All right. There is a video that will go in more detail about how to get your or how to use Screencastify. So if you want that, that's going to be linked right there on that virtual learning toolkit. Okay. The Google Classroom is really how we're organizing everything to get to our kids. So if you click on the slide 8, there's a video that will walk your staff through how to use Google Classroom and how to do like grading and everything in there. And that is so key. That is the most important thing, is just making sure that the teachers know how to put things inside of Google Classroom and how to organize it to make it be the easiest. So, sorry, I've got a million tabs opened up here, but if I go to classroom.google.com, I have a ton of classrooms that I'm involved in, so it's going to take it a second to load. But there's some ways that you can organize this to make it be more effective for virtual teaching. So let me go into one that's my practice. We know that the stream is kind of like where it's like our Facebook stream. Oh, does somebody have a question? I heard a background. Okay, so it's kind of like a social media stream where the students will go to get messages from their teachers, and it will just show everything going on in the classroom, but it's really, really unorganized. And if you get overwhelmed by the stream, there's some ways that we can totally make that be better and more organized. But getting the kids used to clicking on classwork instead of trying to find things in the stream is going to be so much easier. Now, inside of a classwork page, you can have these things called topics. And what topics do is kind of like folders inside of your Google Drive or folders on your desktop, however you want. And you can organize things inside of that. And when the kid clicks on one of them, instead of seeing everything on the classwork page, they're only going to see the things within that topic. And it takes out some of that, oh, I don't know what my teacher wants me to do today. So when you're in your Google Meet session or your Zoom session, you can say, okay, today we're going to be working on topic Chrome Web Store. and you can have everything tied together with that topic. Some teachers are using, instead of putting like a topic name, they're using dates. And that's really helpful for kiddos at multiple levels. So to create a topic on the classwork page, you just go and create an assignment like you normally would. And you can attach anything that you want. But right over here where it says topic, click where it says no topic, and you can assign it to one that's already in there, or you can create a new topic. And if you do want to use dates, you can. Right there. Okay. And when you press assign, it's going to create that topic right up there at the top of this class. So new topics will be filtered from the top to the bottom. Another thing to think about whenever we're teaching virtually is it's really hard to differentiate. It's difficult to differentiate all of the time when we're in the classroom, but especially when we have so many kids at home, they're all working at separate times, trying to do things consistently, or trying to find the time to work and learn all at the same time. So when you create assignments or any of these things inside of Google Classroom, you have the ability to click where it says all students, and it's going to bring up every kid in your class, and these are all teachers, so I'm not breaking any confidentiality. They'll be fine. So you can check the box where it says all students, and then you can put little check marks beside of their names for just the kids that you want to see that assignment, and only they will be able to see it. They won't know that they're the only 3 or however many that you picked. They won't know who else this has been assigned to. And the students that you don't pick, they won't see that assignment either. So we'll only go to those kiddos. Okay. Do you all have any questions so far? I feel like I'm an auctioneer right now, trying to talk as fast as I can, but I always like to ask if there's any questions. It's always easier whenever you're in person because you can read faces and stuff. Okay, I don't see anybody looking too confused on the camera, so I think we're good. I just love those topics and making sure that it's organized. And I'm going to delete this one out because that's a PD session and people are going to be like, wait, what? You've got stuff for us to do. All right. So another thing to think about, whenever we're sending out newsletters to families or to students or anything like that, you can click beside of a topic and copy a link just for that topic, or you can click directly beside of just one assignment and copy a link to that. And if they're logged in to the student account, they'll be able to click that link and go directly to that assignment. So if you have families that you're working with, or if you have students who really get overwhelmed by just the classwork page, it's going to be easier for them just to have one link, and it'll take them just to that, and they won't have to look around and get distracted. Because I know sometimes, like for my daughter, she gets really distracted very easily, and it would be easier for her just to see this one assignment instead of like a whole stream. And then finally, one more thing about the classwork page. Get in the habit of numbering your assignments, because it's going to be easier to tell a kid, like, you're missing assignment 3, 6, and 7, instead of saying you're missing Frankfurt Tour, private tables, and Google Calendar and Meet. Oh, there's the chat. Absolutely, you can contact me at any time. And I didn't even introduce myself at the beginning. I had a meeting right before this, and I was rushing. I am so sorry. My name is Stella, Stella Pollard, and there's my email address, except I put 2 L's in it. It should only have one. I can't even spell Franklin. Oh, Katie, I sent it just to you. Everyone. So there you go. Yeah, email me anytime. I will be so happy to help. Because I know there's so much going on, and all of these resources that I'm going to throw at you, there's just so much. But yeah, I'm always willing to help. So the classwork page is really your bread and butter of the Google Classroom. Another thing to help if you're working with a kid that's really, they just struggle with organization, you can also show them that on the Google Classroom webpage, there is a to-do list. And if students click that, they're going to see all of the things that they've been assigned for all of their classes right there. And then they can see all of the work that they're missing, and they can see everything that they've done and turned in. That makes things just be a little bit easier for them to see, like they're missing work and whatever they're missing and whatever they have to do, like what their upcoming assignments are. All right. So as far as Google Classroom goes, I know that was really fast, and that was really the cheat sheet version of that. That video that I've posted, I have two. I have the introduction and then the Beyond the Basics. Those videos will help, but you always have me to reach out to as a resource as well, and I will be so happy to help at any time. If you have families that you're serving, or you have students that you're serving and they struggle with reading English. Let's say that their natural language is not English, it's Spanish or something else. Google has built in a translator on everything that's text. This won't work on videos unless it's closed captions. It will work on there. But any Google page, whether it be here on Google Classroom or it be a Google search, you can right click, or if you're on a Chromebook, it's a 2-finger click on the mouse pad, just both fingers at one time. And see right here where it says translate to English. This works on Chromebooks, it works on everything. You'll click where it says translate to English, and whenever you get here, you just choose the language and you can translate it. You can translate it to Spanish there. For some reason in my settings, I was messing around the other day and now it never knows what language I'm in. But whenever they do this once, it should save it automatically, and it translates everything on that page to whatever language they chose, in this case, Spanish. And that's just going to break down that barrier. Now, I know that not all of our kiddos can read their home language either, but it might help their families be able to help them, or if it helps, if it helps anyway, it's going to be just a useful tool. To get it back to English, they just refresh the page and it'll go back to the language that it was originally. But if they are ESL kids, then it would be helpful for them to be able to see it in Spanish and be able to toggle back and forth between Spanish and English. It just makes things be a little bit easier for them. It'll work on anything. I say that. There we go. And then just to get it back, they refresh it. Unfortunately, they do have to get in the habit of like right clicking and doing that on every page that they go to. But after they do it once, it saves that language. I think that's a super helpful tip. On YouTube, I know some schools have YouTube blocked for their kiddos, but you can get onto YouTube and turn on closed captions. Some kids really have a hard time with hearing a video and trying to figure out like what they're saying. It's just really hard for them to focus. So right here, there are closed captions on every video. And if you hit that, let me turn the volume off on the video. It'll bring up the closed captions of the video. Maybe. Maybe that's a bad example. But you can also click the cogwheel here. And if there are closed captions on it, they can translate that to Spanish as well, or whatever their language is that they're talking, just by clicking auto translate. And they can go in there. And it'll translate the closed captions to whatever language they chose. Now, that feature is not only great for kiddos that do need a translator, but you can click the cogwheel, and if they're having a really difficult time, like soaking in whatever the video is saying, they can change the playback speed and make it be slower. It slows down the video and it sounds a little bit slower, but for some kids, that's really what they need. And some kids need to hear it a little bit faster. Maybe it's just going too slow for them. So you've got all of those features built right into there. All right. Inside of Google Slides, you can put a sound into there. There's a short video that will show you how to do that. And then also showing the kiddos that they can take screenshots on a Chromebook. And if you click on my slide 12, I've got a screenshot that, oops, wrong way. Let me go to present mode. Tried to zoom in and it went to my next slide. But there is a screenshot there that will show you how to do a screenshot on a Chromebook. It's Control Shift and the button above the 6. To me, it's just easier for kids if they can do that, and then it'll show them how to post it on a Google Slides presentation like I did here, or a Jamboard or anything like that. So you can just share that. And then going beyond the basics, after your teachers feel comfortable with the virtual instruction must-haves and the basics, these are just the things that make it be a little bit extra. So I thought about, like, when I was designing this cool toolkit, you've got your screwdrivers and your wrenches, then you got your power tools, and then you've got your extras, all the stuff that's really dangerous if you don't know how to use it. And this one, they're not dangerous per se, but they are a lot to remember. So it's just taking what you've learned here and making it go that extra mile. I've got in this one, going beyond the basics in Google Forms. Up here, when I talk about Google Forms, we're talking about just doing those quick check-ins, maybe a health, like a mental health questionnaire where you're asking how they're feeling for the day, or it could be an exit slip asking them what was their 3, 2, 1, 3 things they learned, 2 things that they found interesting, and 1 thing they found boring, or whatever. So those are just your general forms and surveys. But in this slide and video, I talk about how to give immediate feedback to students if they get the question wrong, because you can automatically give feedback to your kids within forms. You can embed videos into forms and put those directly into it, and then underneath it have them summarize. You can go into forms and you can insert pictures, you can insert anything that you want to, or you could do a choose your own adventure story to where they have a question and they pick the answer, and it's going to take them to different scenarios based upon the question that they picked. And this video will show you how to do all of that. So it's really just going that extra mile. It's super fun, but if the teachers don't already know how to do a Google form that's just asking questions, this might be a little bit overwhelming for them, but it's really engaging for the kids. It's super easy on the kids' end, but for the teachers, it's just a little bit of work up front, but then they can reuse it every unit just by going in and changing just a few things, and that video will show them how to do that. Some students really do well with learning through videos. This right here will show you how to create your own YouTube channel, but really it relies a lot on the Screencastify, because whenever you create a video with Screencastify, you can push it straight to YouTube. The reason why it's easier to watch YouTube videos than it is to watch Google Drive videos is because Google Drive wasn't typically made to store videos in it. So it's really hard for it to buffer videos, and that's why it looks a little grainy. If you ever have a video in Drive that you've seen, it's like, oh, this quality is just not good. If you push that to YouTube, it's going to be so much more clear, and this video and resource will help you get started with that. Sometimes too, it's really helpful to have a classroom hub, so like a website where you can go and put everything in. And this resource on my virtual toolkit will walk you through how to create your own Google Classroom, your own Google site. And you can put whatever you want to on there, and you can make them look however you want. So this is something I need to go in and add to my virtual toolkit. But in Franklin County, we have what's called a family hub. And this is a Google site that I could share with my students to help them learn how to use the common resources that we use in class. So it's very similar to the toolkit that I'm sharing with you, but it's geared more so for our kids and how they can learn how to use all of these different resources. But you can break your site into however you want, and that video within my toolkit will help them learn how to, help the teachers learn how to use the I lost my tab. Hang on. The video inside of my virtual toolkit will help the teachers learn how to create their own websites from there. Okay, so I know, like, I embedded the videos onto my slides because I know that this is so much. Oh, why does it say that? Okay, it just wasn't loaded yet. I know it's so much. I know it's so much for us. It's so much for our teachers. It's so much for our kids. So I wanted to really have all of our resources in one spot. That way teachers and staff can always refer back to that. So it's just nice and congruent all together there. But all of these tools will help you with making sure that you're teaching your kids and doing exactly what they need. So I know that we have a lot of people in the Zoom, and I want to pause because is everyone using like Zoom to do their virtual teaching, or are you all using Google Meet? I know it might be different per district. And if you want to hop in the chat and tell me, you're more than welcome to. But I know in Franklin County, we're using Google Meet. But I know also in Fayette County, they're using Zoom. Okay. Google Teams, awesome. We weren't allowed to use, well, I can't say we're not allowed to use Zoom. It was just very encouraged that we weren't. Microsoft Teams. Okay, Microsoft Teams. Awesome. Okay, great. You all are fabulous. So there's tons of resources, and this is more so for those of you with Google Meet. There are some Google Meet resources that are coming out really soon that we will be able to utilize. And there are just some great security things coming out that we are really looking forward to. But if you're not an enterprise system, then you won't have the breakout rooms and you won't be able to record long meetings and stuff like that. But most of the stuff that's coming out in September, you will have access to. So those are some things to be pretty excited about. I know we're really excited as well for all of those. Awesome. Y'all are fabulous. And I really am going fast. Do I have till 12 or was it 11:30? In my head I was thinking 30 minutes, but now I realize that It might have been an hour. So, okay, good. I can slow down. Okay, thank you so much, Katie. All right. So, for those of you that are using the other things, Google Meet is what we're using in the district. So I'm sorry that all of the stuff that I've been preaching is more so geared towards that. But I do have a Zoom cheat sheet for kids if you all need it, and I will be more than happy to share that with you. So Jamboard is something that is brand new to Google. Like I say brand new, it's been out for a year. It's not really brand new anymore. I should probably stop doing that. But Jamboard is really cool. It's like a digital whiteboard. And Jamboard is, let me just pull one up. I'd like to share with you all, since now I know that I have time, one that you can interact with if you want to. And I'll put that right in the chat box in a second when it loads. So if you ever need to share links with your staff and you're not in a Google Classroom or anything like that, but you want them to have a copy of it, and it's a Google resource, you go to the end of the URL to where it says edit, and you erase everything from, edit forward, and it will make it a forced copy. Let me try this again. Let me open up. It might be easier if I open up the chat. Here we go. So Jerry, I almost sent this just to you. You would have been the only one in there. So you erase everything on the URL from edit onwards towards sharing, and then just put copy. And then whenever people click on that link, it's going to force them to make their own copy, so they don't have that view only or anything like that. And they're going to be able to only utilize, or this copy that they'll make, it will be theirs. So they don't have to worry about messing up anybody else's stuff. So I did make this for one of our high schools. So sorry that it says FCHS. But it's just like a Google Slides presentation. And up here at the top, you've got different sliders. So if I click next, I can go in. I shared one with you all that I had actually already colored on. So we can erase those things off that I've already done if you want to. But the students can have something embedded onto the background from the teacher. And then they can take their pen and they can color on their screen. They can switch it over to a marker and color on the screen like this. It's just a little thicker than the pen. But think about if it's an article, how awesome it is to have this highlighter. And to me, like, I think the highlighter is my favorite, even for coloring, because it's a thicker pen, and it's just so nice to have it. And then there's also a paintbrush, which is also really pretty, kind of like watercolor there. You got your eraser, you've got your pointer, just to switch it back from a pen or eraser. But they have Post-it notes on here, and that's how they can go in and they can just type in their text. They can add multiple Post-it notes if they want to. They can change the color of the Post-it notes, and they can collaborate on these just like with anything within the Google Suite, the G Suite. So if it's inside of Classroom, you can go to an assignment, make a copy for each student, and it will be there. You can insert pictures on here. So if you click the picture icon, you can upload stuff directly from your device, or you can do a Google image search. So if they're doing a project about the world or anything, they can just look up different pictures and insert those onto the Jamboard as well. And it's so fun. Like, the students can do really anything on this and be as creative as they want to. Last week, they came out with the ability to put shapes in. So if they're doing something for language arts or they're working on a writing piece and something else, think about how awesome it would be for them to make like a little mind map here. And they could just continue to add like different layers. You got your arrow to go on for next idea and stuff like that. You could, as a teacher, you could go in and make your own graphic organizers, and then they could just put in their post-it notes for their text, and they'll have it all right there. And they've also got the ability just to insert a text box. This is new since I've been in here last time, so you don't even have to use the sticky note. You can just type your text in this box and put it wherever you want, and it'll all be right there. The last one is just a laser. It just disappears after you circle on it. But if you want to play around with that, you are more than welcome to. I've got just some different ideas in there for different content areas. You've got some stuff for geography and social studies, and then science on that last page there. And you've got something for math. Like, there's so many creative ways that you can just use Jamboard, and it's completely like a new idea, but I love how simple it is, because if you go to the end, you can just continue to add new slides. You can add any background you want. Like, you've got your dot background that'll help them draw nice straight lines. You've got like just normal text for paper, loose leaf paper background. You've got your grid. I mean, there's just so many cool things. And if every student was working on one of these in Google Classroom, you could go to the classwork page and you could click on the assignment that they're working on. Let me just get to something. Let me show you all. Google Calendar. You can see what everybody is doing just by, when it loads, looking at their screen. It gives you that little preview. So if they're working on a Jamboard and you made a copy for each kid, on my mouse pad, what I'm doing right now is zooming in just by moving my fingers farther apart. But I could just go through here and be like, oh, it looks like Lee Kuhn has done something really cool. I want to click on hers and see what she has done. And it'll open up an interface for me to go in there and to see. But I love having the ability to have that live view, because as students are working, it's going to be changing on your screen, and you'll be able to see that just as like a little preview window directly in there. And I think that Jamboard is one that will be so useful for that feature. Okay, moving along. Now that I know that I could take a breath. One of the other things that I have fallen in love with is Pear Deck. And Pear Deck is one of these things that allows you to take something like I've got on my screen right now with this virtual learning toolkit. It's really hosted within a Google Slides presentation. And what Pear Deck will allow you to do is to take this presentation and make it be interactive for your kids. So you can embed questions directly on this Pear Deck. You can embed like polls and drawing tools and everything. And if you're doing a live session virtually, like if you all are on a Google Meet, the students could be hearing you in the background but have this Pear Deck open in another tab, and you're going to have the ability to click the next button, and the student screens will automatically go to that next button. Not only that, but you could also do it to where it's a student paced version, and the students will be able to go at their own pace and do all those things. And as a teacher, you're going to have the ability to see who it was that joined your session for the day, either with it being a live session or a student paced. So you'll be able to see who got on there. You'll be able to have those formative assessments built inside of your Google Slides, and you'll be able to see how the students did. And it's just one of those quick ways where you can see if the students really did pay attention to what you're doing. Now, what I think is the best about Pear Deck, this is a tool that I use all of the time in the classroom because I wanted the kids to have a chance to see what was on my screen on their screen and be interactive with it. I heard something on the chat. I thought, oh, never mind. That's a different chat going on. Never mind, that was an email. Okay, so Pear Deck is one of those things that if the teachers learn how to use it now, it's going to be transformative within their everyday classroom, within their classes. And I really think they're going to love it. The free version is what I've always used. I always try to find free premium trials of Pear Deck and use those over and over. Sometimes I have very good luck with that. But if you click on the pear in the picture, I have a PD that I did this summer, and it'll take you to the website that I designed for this. All of the videos on here are very short. They're like 3 to 5 minute long little snippets on how to do everything that you need to do inside of Pear Deck to create your lesson and make it be interactive. And it will also show you how to start a lesson with your students and how to grab the data from the website so you can have evidence, or you have your proof that your students were interactive with you for the day. I love it. Like, it's one of my favorite things in this world. I wish that I had enough money just to buy every teacher a premium Pear Deck so they could just utilize it all the time. Okay, so I'm going to return back to our toolkit here. And I have 2 more to share, and then I know you all probably have some questions, or you probably would like to just play around with this yourself and see what you could find useful for you and your district. But Flipgrid is something that's been around for a really long time now. And I say really long, not really long. I shouldn't say that, but it's been very active since 2016. That's when it kind of exploded. And it's been talked about a whole lot. But when we're teaching virtually, our kids don't have a chance to interact with one another like they do during normal days. And that's kind of a duh, but it's also really sad because our kids don't have that chance to build the classroom community. And Flipgrid allows you to post a question. Now, sometimes these questions can be very interactive with what you learned for the day. It could have been something like, what was your favorite thing you learned today, or whatever. But what I'm thinking about virtual learning is how beautiful would it be if these were get to know you questions where the students can get in there and they can talk about their favorite hobby, or they could talk about their favorite movie, and your kids could post video responses back to one another, and it could just go over and over, and they could have that natural conversation. You can set it up to where you have to approve the videos before other people can see them in your grid, but it would be so amazing just to have them have those conversations. And virtual learning is hard. It's very difficult, but the kids being able to see one another's faces, it would just help them build that community. This is also going to be great, like for SEL kids, for the social emotional learning, whenever you need to have like just a chance for them to share how they're feeling and talk about the emotions that they're having from virtual learning or from whatever that is going on. So I really love it. The video will walk you through everything on how to get started with Flipgrid. It's not a very long video, but it will show you how to design the videos, or how to design the grid or the topic, and the students will be able to get in there. There's also a whiteboard, so if you work with math teachers and you want to show them how to use the whiteboard, the students can annotate on that and work out problems and explain their thinking. So it's really cool to see all of that. And then finally, this is kind of, it's something to keep in mind. the Bitmoji classrooms have completely blown up. They've just completely blown up. And I did a session over the summer. And in this session, we really talked about like the copyright violations of these, because there's a lot of them that's being shared everywhere, and there's a lot of copyright infringement going on. And I'm not saying that the teachers are going to get caught, but it's something that they need to be aware of, because if they do get caught, they might not know about all of the repercussions that could come from that. So we talk about that in this session. We also talk about how we can take pictures that are free for public reuse and modify those, and how to create our own. But we also in this video talk about how bandwidth heavy these things are for the kids that are in very rural parts of our state, because everything that we put in here is a picture. And if we have a lot of those high resolution pictures inside of a Bitmoji classroom, it's going to be really hard for some of our kids to load those. So those are just a few things to keep in mind with them. But if Bitmoji classroom is your teacher's jam and they really want to know how to make one, this video will show them how to do it legally, following all of those guidelines that we should be following for as good digital citizenships ourselves. Because if we don't model digital citizenship, then the students will grow up and they also will not model good digital citizenship. If I could even say that word, that would be great. Okay, just a couple more things that I'd like to share with you, and I promise I'll leave time for questions. I do like to talk, so if you're feeling overwhelmed, just sing me down. That's what we say in our Baptist churches back home. Just feel free to sing me down, and I will slow. But whenever I was talking about the Bitmoji classroom, when we have our kids out in rural parts of the world, and there's some things on these Chromebooks that it's just, we don't have internet at home, but the Chromebooks don't have to be worthless. We can do so much with these, even with their offline. So I'm going to go into that virtual toolkit, and I will add a link to this family hub inside of there. But I've got some videos here on how to save videos on a flash drive, so students that don't have internet at home can have a resource to show them how to download those onto a flash drive so they can watch them anytime. I have a video that will show you how to use your Chromebook offline. And so if you have a kid and a Chromebook is all they have, and they do have a flash drive or they have resources on Google Drive that they want to work on offline, they can do that. And this video will help them do that. How to scan paper documents with a phone, how to make files be available offline inside of Google Drive so they can edit them whenever they feel like. And then they don't have to have an internet connection for that one. And then also how to watch videos offline. So there's lots of resources on all of this, and I feel like I've given you all a lot. The best way to learn is to play, and you also have my contact information. I'll type it down here in the speaker notes. My email address is just stella.pollard@franklin.kyschools.us. Another good way to get up with me, I have the Franklin County Schools Instructional Technology Facebook page that you all can follow. I'm always posting helpful tips on there and sharing those out. So if you want to go there, you're more than welcome to. And then you can also follow me on Twitter. I post a lot on there. It's slowed down a lot this summer because I've been a little busy and I just haven't been on Twitter a whole lot. But if you want to follow me on Twitter, there's my handle, and I'll be happy to help. And backing up, I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Stella Pollard. I'm the digital learning coach for Franklin County Schools, and I really appreciate you all taking time to learn with me today. And if you ever need anything, feel free to reach out at any time. So there's some chats going on here. Awesome. I see all kinds of familiar names on the chat. Okay, thank you, Angela, and thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, M. Bowling. I appreciate you all. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer any of those. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you so much, Diane. Thank you, Christy. Absolutely. I sure can. And I have my Chromebook right here beside of me. Well, I said I had it beside of me. My husband and daughter used it for virtual learning today. Hey, Chris, where's my Chromebook? Chris, where's my Chromebook? Will you hand it to me? He's handing it to me. But my Chromebook, do you know where it's at? So Ronnie's question is, he was asking if I could share more about how to use the Chromebooks offline. Thank you so much. So I'm going to turn my camera on instead of logging this up and getting Zoom downloaded on it, because the Chromebooks are a little bit slow. So if you don't see me yet, I'm going to turn my Chromebook on. And mine's a flip screen. I promise I'm not breaking it. So if you have a Chromebook and the internet connection, let me turn my internet off on it, and there's no internet connection, you can still use this without that. And I know Ronnie said that you all, let's see, let me see your question again. I want to make sure. Have limited internet or closed access. So Ronnie, do you think that there's going to be parts of your all's facilities that will have internet access, correct? Like the students could go to the library for a minute or two and get an internet connection enough to download something and then go back to their general area. I want to make sure that I'm being on task with your question.
Sure. Hi there. I'm going to jump in. So we have a lot of different varieties of programs, as you know. Some of them are juvenile detention centers or more restrictive environments. And that's a little bit different than some of our other programs that have an open access. And so they are just a traditional classroom. They just happen to be in a facility. But we do have some programs where we have students who are for example, sex offender programs or other things where students have a lot of restrictions about internet connectivity and about what sites they can access. And so I think it would be beneficial for our folks to know a little more about these resources, that they could still use Chromebooks digitally, even if they don't have an open access for students to just go anywhere on the internet.
Got you. Awesome. And so I'm just going to show you my Chromebook then. So whenever the students have their Chromebooks, you won't have an internet connection on them, right? Like you've got it set up to where the internet's just going to not be on there. Or they won't have a password, so that makes sense. Okay, so I'm going to try to log in. You can see that my internet is turned off on my Chromebook. So let me just get logged in here. I'm going to log in on a student account. So when you try to log in to a Chromebook and the internet is not there, you're going to see, it'll tell you that no internet is active or no Wi-Fi is active. So you're just going to click the cancel button. And the student will just log in to a Chromebook like normal. And this video on my screen will help you with that. Let's see, the Chromebook offline. That video will walk you through how to do all of that, and you can do that exactly with the kids. Like the teachers and aides and everybody can share the video with the kids. they'll just log in like normal. So I'm going to type in Audrey, my daughter's account. And whenever they do that, there's certain things, if I could get her password correctly. There's certain things that on my video on my screen, I look like I'm doing exactly the same thing. So I was like, wait, what? So if I try to go to a tab and I try to do a search, it connected me back to internet. I try to do a search, let's just say I try to go to Google Classroom. It tells me that I have no internet access whatsoever. But if I go to drive.google.com, if I went in there and made any of my files available for offline, the students will be able to go and click on those files and be able to edit them just like they could if they were online. So I don't know if you all can see on my screen right now that some of my files look kind of like blurry. Like my first two right here, you can't click on them. They're grayed out. But over here, I have some that look like they might be available because they're not grayed out like my first two. And I can click on that and I'll be able to open it up just like if I was online. And I'd be able to type directly in those boxes and it's going to save that. The Chromebooks have some storage, but it'll save it directly to the computer or to their device. But trying to share that with their teachers would be the hard part because you can't go to Google Classroom in order to get it turned in to their Google Classroom. But that might be a question that like I can ponder on, and like because they can edit those, it would just be how would they get them to the teachers? It could be like a flash drive they could download onto a flash drive and then give the flash drive to their teacher. That would work. Or there might be a better answer. I wasn't prepared for that question because that's a really good question.
I'll jump in. One of the ways I think in those very restrictive environments where students may be working in their cottage or they may be working in their pod within a DJJ facility, the teacher could collect those Chromebooks, load that information onto the Chromebooks, and then give those Chromebooks back to students as assignments so that they could work their way through it and then recollect those. And they have staff, if you partner with your staff at the DJJ facilities or others, you can work with those folks to help collect those Chromebooks back as well, or whatever device you're using to make sure that you're still doing that. So I just thinking out loud that there are some different opportunities there.
Absolutely.
But I just want to make sure that we covered that so that we do know that folks have opportunity for using those resources and some of these, even when they might not have as immediate access or wide open access as other places.
Absolutely. And there's a lot that can be done offline and then shared, like the scenario that you gave, to where the teachers are taking the devices and then they just open them up. They would have to have the students' login information, though, for that. Would that be a problem?
I don't think that would be a problem.
Okay. I know it's different. Thinking about like the academy here in Frankfurt, that's something that they probably would have to do as well, and that would be a good workaround for them. But I will make sure that you all do have all of those resources, especially the Chromebook offline and how to watch videos offline, because the students can also, like the teachers could download the video onto their student devices, and the students can watch it without having any of the distractions of YouTube or having any of the distractions of being on the internet, because it's saved to the actual device.
Stella, thank you so much for being here this morning, for spending this a whirlwind of an hour with us. We appreciate you so much. I know that we had a lot of information to cover, and I really just am so grateful for you spending this time with us, giving us some good information and good resources. Just a reminder to our folks out there, we'll make sure that we share all of this information on our website as well, and give you the links to make sure you have those, not just in this chat function here, but we'll save those also into our resources online and make sure that we share that out to everybody. We really appreciate you, Stella, being here. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who has joined us this morning. It's noon. My clock says it's 12 o'clock straight on the time. And I told you I was going to respect your time this morning. And so that's our session for today. We hope that you have learned some valuable information. We know we presented a lot to you today, but we hope that it's a lot of good, rich information that you can take back and start building on. Obviously, we covered in this last session a lot of things. And so these are building blocks. And so it'll take some time for you to spend with them, to get familiar with it yourself, to play around with it, to have fun with it. And I think when you have fun with it, your students are going to have fun with it. And it'll be a great opportunity to enhance the work that you're already doing out there. So thank you all so much for being here. We are excited that you're part of our team and that you're ready to serve our students. They're going to be better for the work that you're putting in today. And we appreciate all of you so much for being here. So thank you. Always feel free to reach out to us. We're here if you need anything. So thanks for being here, and we will see you all again soon. Thanks, everybody.